kind of hard to lie with your body. My mind can make up stories, but the body is pretty much, this is how I move. And so the body is a more authentic way of communicating. Like somebody's talking to me saying I'm fine, and their arms are crossed and their head's down. I'm like, right now you don't look fine.
Welcome to Voices of Esalen. Today my guest is an Esalen legend of sorts, Jeffries. Known to the masses as simply JJ, he's a recognizable figure on the Esalen campus, meeting and greeting arrivals with a kind and pleasant vibe, as well as his memorably dry sense of humor. Some of the classes JJ teaches at Esalen include how to drop into Esalen and pathways to joy. He's also a mentor, a Gestalt practitioner, a sensory awareness guide. JJ describes his pre-Esalen self as a, quote, clueless yokel from Indiana, the middle child of 6 boys, quote, born poor, perpetually confused, raised on corn and really bad TV, until he hit his stride at age 22 when he, quote, joined the privileged ranks of bartenders and ne'er-do-wells and never looked back. I know you'll enjoy this conversation with JJ Jeffries. He's got a lot of great insight on being part of the culture of the creative and the curious, and inviting joy, awe, and magic with continuous awareness. We kicked off today's episode with a little Esalen check-in.
The Esalen check-in, yes, I love that piece. But usually before I check in, I have a habit of wanting to start talking, but I'm just kind of looking inside a little bit to see what's going on inside, because that's the part I really want to check in with. When I start to bring my awareness to the outside sensations of the sound of the ocean, the sound of my voice, I can feel my nervous system start to relax a bit. I feel my legs and arms get heavier as the gravity takes hold. Then I go into a check-in, which for me means checking in with how this body is doing in the moment. How am I feeling? And are they feelings I want to change or keep the same? I'm noticing that I'm starting to feel some warmth on my shoulders. Another sign that I'm starting to relax a bit. My diaphragm goes down a little lower when I breathe. And I'm feeling the sun, and I'm just feeling excitement of being alive now. I've invited this aliveness that is so much here at Esalen, and in this lovely interview where I'm, there's a little bit in the background of nervousness, like how will I perform? How will I show up? The risk of showing who I am and that possibly being judged, and taking that and trying to compartmentalize it just a little over to the side, and seeing your face and your nodding, that your affirmation really helps me do that. So now I think I'm really, really happy and ready to be here. Sam, how about you? You want to do a check-in?
I'd love to. Yeah, I liked what you did there with kind of checking in, tuning into your own body and tuning into how am I really doing. Yeah, I feel like I'm trying to allow space for gratitude and enjoyment and joy to be in my life and in my body. It's sort of an adjustment from having to do a bunch of things, having to get those tasks out of the way. I'm so task oriented in the mornings when I'm trying to get my family out the door to Esalen, plus doing some extra caretaking duties at the place that I live at Rancho Rico in Big Sur, taking care of some animals this morning. So this morning I happened to wake up at 5 this morning, which is kind of insane. But got out of bed at 6 and went and let some burros out of their stall, or donkeys, I suppose, but they're called burros where we live by the owners. Heather and Sydney are awesome folks who are the landowners there. We live on their property. I fed some chickens and some ducks. It is a good way to begin my morning. But now I'm with you, and I too am excited about this interview, though I'm not nervous, because I do this, and it's such a cool privilege to step into a one-on-one time with people who I know. In your case, I know you quite well, but having the time to sit down and be face to face and learn more about you is this cool privilege. Yeah. And I love where we are right now at Esalen. We're in the old programs office, now Camille's office. The location of this office is right next to the Pacific Ocean. So I have this incredibly soothing sound of something that is so much bigger than me and so much bigger than my effect on the world. And it is really puts me in my place in the best way possible. And every time that I think that it's over, then a wave comes again. Man, what a gift to be here at Esalen in this time when the world is not yet ravaged by climate change and sectarian violence. Just to be here with a healthy family and a community. God, I know that I'm so lucky, and my job now is to allow that feeling of luck and allow that feeling of gratitude to permeate me. And I'm on the case. Yeah, I'm on it, JJ. And so happy to be here with you.
Thank you for inviting me. I've loved these podcasts of yours. It's something Esalen has always needed. The lineage of Esalen can be lost very easy. There's so many stories, so much about Esalen. And that's a tradition that needs to be saved for others to enjoy. I've enjoyed so many and heard so many things about Esalen even I didn't know. So I'm very, very grateful for the voices of Esalen.
That's great. Yeah. What was that history book that I think it was Howard Zinn? He wrote this book, A People's History of the United States. So this is a people's history of Esalen, which, I mean, Esalen that's what it's been all about. It's not just about like the Alan Watts and Joseph Campbell and Gabrielle Roths. It's also the person who's been back in maintenance for 10 years, the person who's been washing dishes, for 15 years at Esalen. And there's no one story. There's no one narrative.
Yes. Esalen, somebody called it Esalen the Inkblot Institute. Yeah, so everybody has their vision of Esalen and what it really is. Some people hold on stronger to it than others, but yeah, that's what it is. I mean, we have one great people that have come here, and that greatness also resides in the people who aren't out front, the people, as you say, washing dishes and doing things in the background and the fabric. That's what keeps Esalen together as a community and the place itself.
That's right. Shout out to the Esalen groundskeepers. Shout out to the Esalen Farm and Garden. Shout out to the cabins crew. Shout out to Leap, Reap, old time work scholars, and the office managers. Yeah. So tell me, what's your Esalen origin story? When did you come here? How did you come here? Why did you come here?
Oh, good questions, and always wonderful to keep changing it, because I've done it so many times. It's easy to just blurt it out.
Yeah.
Because it's like rehearsed now.
Oh, you have a script?
Oh, yeah.
Feel free to go off script or stay on.
I'm going to go a different tack. Instead of going, well, I went here, then there, then that happened. It's more of the feeling journey instead of the actual movement journey. So the feeling, what brought me here, I think that's the important thing. I'm from the Midwest, and I always just felt that there was something missing for me there. So I came to the West Coast up in Portland, and I thought, oh, this is very different. Different areas of the country have different types of ways of communicating and being. And the Pacific Coast culture is very interesting, because that's where the pioneers ended up. They couldn't go any further, unless they got on a boat. So I see a lot of edgy people who are running to take more risk, I think, on the West Coast. Generalization, but I got a bit of that. And so I was feeling it, but there was still a lot about me that I didn't know. And I didn't know that I didn't know, but I felt that there was something. And I'm a big hot spring person. I had this synchronicities thing happen where, I had a dog of 13 years died. I had a relationship that ended. I rented my house, and then the relationship, and then I had nowhere to go except get in my car and start traveling around. So I went down different places. I slept in vineyards in Napa, then got a job. And then I went to Harbin Hot Springs, and I was talking to a guy about hot springs, and we talked about this place that used to be around called Esalen. And he said, dude, it's still there. I'm like, whoa, the people must be ancient. So I thought, well, I'll just come down to Esalen. And I had no idea what Esalen was. I didn't know what a workshop was. I just wanted to do a hot tub. But I couldn't do that unless I wanted to do a bath from 1 to 3 a.m. or pay a lot of money for a workshop, which I didn't know what it was. And I saw the Work Scholar program, which now we call the LEAP program, and stay here for a month and work and be on the ocean and do hot tubs. How could I lose?
What year was this?
This was 2002. I arrived the first day the new hot tubs opened, the new baths opened.
Wow.
Yeah, I thought they were doing it for me. And so I arrived, and as soon as I hit that gate, Sam, and I looked out the ocean, I put on the emergency brake, got out of the car, and when my foot hit the ground, I went, this is it. And there was no rational thing of what it was, but through my whole body that says, I have arrived. I need to be here. This is my place.
Wow. You know, I had very much the same feeling the first time that I came here on property. I felt so, and I entered through the Work Scholar program also.
Yeah.
I felt so like, oh, I want to stay here. I want to stay here. I want to stay.
And that was a problem for me because in the beginning, I was grasping at Esalen. And Esalen has a way of getting rid of people that are grasping. And I won't get into the whole story, but I had a chance to be here, and then something drastic happened, kind of nasty, actually. And Esalen kind of kicked me out.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Dick Price said this should be a bus stop. And I think he was right. And so I left. And then 6 weeks later, things changed at Esalen. They said, come back.
Oh, they invited you back.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes. And I'm like, okay. And that was my first lesson.
Okay.
My first lesson.
Well, what was that first Work Scholar month that you did?
Oh, that was with one of the elders, David Schiffman.
Yeah.
You know, a really big cowboy, jewelry wearing, cigar smoking Jew from the Bronx, leading workshops here at Esalen. And he was a wild man. He was a wild energy.
I have heard so much about David. First of all, David is the father of Ryan and his brother Zach. Zach's now deceased. But Ryan was the boyfriend of Candace, who I married. So they were together for about 5 years. So I've heard so much about David, but never got to the chance to meet him. He's passed away too. What was David like?
David was, nothing inconsequential ever came out of his mouth. Like, he didn't chit chat. There was none. It was always a wisdom seeking voice. But he was like a big Buddha. He'd sit real back in his chair. He had this big belly and a beard, mustache. He looked wild. And he'd just sit back there and laugh. And he had a great sense of humor. And he was irreverent. And he was a bit of a troublemaker. He loved challenging authority. But for me, that was it's also, I think as a man also, getting a maybe over masculine pathway gave me an invitation to come and explore.
Yeah.
Without saying these things aren't masculine or looking at the feminine side and things of that sort. So he gave me a bit of that permission, and he was very welcoming and supportive of me being here.
Yeah, all those characteristics that you described about him, irreverence and humor, all that, I mean, I would associate with you as well. You got that bartender gift of gab. I mean, you've been a bartender, right?
Yeah, I was a bartender for 25 years. So it was kind of a good transition because everything I prepared in bartending kind of translates here at Esalen, the way I connect with people without talking, knowing, seeing the movement signs. And now I'm just dispensing a different type of spirit. So I'm bartending at Esalen, but I'm working with people differently at a more deep level. I got to the business of learning why I was here, and I found out later the real reason I was here is that I could change who I was. I didn't think that was possible.
Tell me more about that.
Well, there's this piece of, at a point in my life, I'm JJ, and this is what I do. And if it doesn't work for you, well, too bad. This explains a lot of my failed relationships in my life. And so I got to seeing that I could work like conflict. I avoided conflict. I was kind of like a joy boy. It was great. It stops being great. I move on.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of almost a serial monogamous, for many years, until I figured one day the common problem in all those relationships was me. That's the one that kept moving. So I started started taking workshops, of course, and one of the work scholar months with Dorothy Charles. So then I got into Esalen Gestalt, which is basically, working with conflict. That's part of being with people.
Mm.
And of course, in the beginning, I said, that's ridiculous. I had 5 brothers. Conflict meant getting beat up or acquiescing, right? So being able to see this change, that you could be with something in conflict, wasn't a bad thing. Now, I think the word conflict needs to be changed because it has some baggage to it. I started changing the word to friction. As human beings, we need friction to grow. I have no conflict, I don't grow. If I stay safe, I'm stuck. So I need that friction to grow, just like music. Music without friction doesn't work. You listen to a song in the elevator, all of a sudden the song sucks, right? And so the trouble is, I think most human beings have too much friction in their lives. I definitely did, and I judged it as bad. So Dorothy called me her poster child for Gestalt because I went in kicking and screaming until one day I saw it happen. I'm like, wow. So this is, then I got around the business of discovering more.
When you were in Dorothy's Gestalt process and you found it, you're in the beginning stages of that process. What was it like for you to be seen by a group going through personal stuff?
It was really hard. That's totally opposite of what I learned as a child, right? So to be seen and heard, I had to see and hear myself first. I tried doing what other people were doing, but it felt inauthentic, and I felt like I betrayed myself a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Like crying in front of a group of people coming from the Midwest. Wow, that was a big one. And it was too soon for me to do that. Too soon. I think it's valuable and necessary, but when do you do it? I was taking risk because I thought I should take the risk.
Okay.
I'm crying because everybody else is crying. Instead of learning that my body is now ready to evoke a little bit. The idea is to take a risk that's not too big. If I take too big a risk, I traumatize myself. Too small and I don't grow. So that balance between risk and safety.
Did it feel strange at all to be doing that kind of opening up in a group? Like when you came to Esalen, I mean, you came here because somebody at Harbin, recommended it. You didn't know that it was sort of like the home of Gestalt processing, kind of group therapy type of deal. Did that feel like, what's going on?
It felt like this is new. And I specialize in how do I maneuver in a new environment. And I do it through humor and irreverence, as we talked about. So I just kind of joked around in it a lot. And that was my way of staying safe and pretending like, oh, yeah, I can do this. This is what I do, But inside I was like, okay, how do I navigate this?
Yeah.
How do I navigate this?
Yeah. Do you remember what was the tipping point where you kind of like opened up, or was it a more gradual thing?
It was definitely more gradual. I think the conflict thing is what made me convinced. I saw we were with Dorothy and 2 people, conflict, didn't like each other. And I said, this is going to be messy. And at the end, they didn't love each other, but they came to a resolution. How can we live together and work together? And I don't have to be your best friend, but you're a human being and I'm a human being. How can we respect each other and find how we can move our boundaries? Do I have to have this stiff boundary? Can I bring it back? Can I move it forward? So that negotiating piece of boundaries and being with people was totally new for me. And once I saw that quote unquote work, meaning they didn't kill each other, I went, okay, now I'm in the business. Now I jumped in with both feet and just started hitting it hard. Started learning at Esalen.
And at that time, were you also engaging on the body level? yeah, I'd be curious to hear about any of the practices or teachers that had an influence on the somatic level.
Well, first of all, before anyone, way over anyone, is Esalen itself. It has been the biggest teacher because Esalen, I think, invites everyone, but I'll say for me, to feel deeply what I want to feel. All the practices it has, the thousands of years of energy here, the Native Americans, as we said, when we put our foot on this land, we knew, you and I both did. Didn't know what it was, didn't have details. The mind wasn't engaging in that. The body just kind of goes, we know it. So Esalen was a through line. It still is the through line. Because when we're talking about body, we're talking about sensations and emotions and energy. So the body, the language is through sensation and energy. That's how I speak to the body. So the people that helped me learn how to do that, Gestalt gave me a mental framework and a body.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the gateway in. For my mind to relax enough to try this new woo-woo stuff, I needed some hard evidence.
Yeah.
Right? So that's the pathway in. And so Gestalt is a wonderful language for practices. It's a embodied practice is what it is. A way of speaking. So what words do I use? How do I approach people? When I got language for it, all of a sudden it became real and valid. Right? It was still real in my body, but talking about it was awkward because it seemed like, what am I doing? Right? I couldn't really bring much to it. I believed it because I felt it.
Yeah.
But a lot of belief, they say, has to come through science and proving it. But I start looking around, and pretty much most of the things we believe, I believe, is what I feel. So some of these teachers, Dorothy, of course, was the first one. I also did a lot of work with Ken Robbins, who was more sensory awareness. So his language, he was showing me the language of sensations more. Gestalt does it too, but Ken was more focused on that. Another, of course, Perry Hollowan and Johanna, who are still teaching here. Perry is great. Everybody with Gestalt has a different approach to it. You can't really say Gestalt is this. You ask 100 people, you got 100 definitions. So, and it's true because we're all very different people. We have our own personal, it's like music, everybody plays the same song differently. So those were two. And one thing that really helped me, there was a group that came here, the Santa Barbara Graduate Institute of Somatic Psychology, and we brokered a deal with them. Most of their graduate students were remote. And then, like a lot of graduate programs, they would come in person like 2 or 3 times a year. So what they did 4 times a year, they would come up here and their graduates would come from all over the world. And they would bring a different somatic teacher from all over the world each time. And I did like 20 of these things. So all these different somatic teachers, that came in like ADP, Hakomi, all sorts of body work and things. So this was science and body put together, studying that deeply. And that really took me off. So I had a lot of experiences and a intellectual framework to go with these experiences.
Yes.
So those were really, really wonderful for me.
So you mentioned body work, and you're an Esalen massage therapist, right?
Yes.
At what point did you start studying Esalen massage?
I took Esalen massage because that's another way I could be here without leaving. So I took the 4-week massage course at the time.
So pretty much in the beginning of your journey.
Right. Something like the 4th or 5th. I did like 6 work scholar months, which I wasn't supposed to be able to do. But
the charm.
I'm the charm, yes. I made myself, indispensable as much as possible. And so then I did that for a while.
Who did you study with for Esalen massage?
That was Brita and Cece. Okay. 2 totally different people. Cece, massage practitioner, the loudest laugh in the world. You could hear him all over property. Big dreadlocks, wonderful man, very powerful. And Brita, more of a therapist as well, softer voice. So I had these 2 pivots, between them. And so learned a lot in that.
Talk to me about how Esalen massage fits into the whole gestalt of JJ.
Yeah. Well, that's the body part, right? So there's a piece where There's no talking. So what conversation am I having with the body now? And that's what I really think we are connecting mostly through the body, not so much what we say to each other. It's because I'm watching your face and all the micro movements, how you're breathing, the position of your body. So when I'm massaging someone, and this is what makes Esalen massage so wonderful, I'm not just doing a certain series of moves I learned. If I'm really massaging, I'm having a conversation with the body. My fingers go in, and at one point the body says, that's far enough, if I'm paying attention. And then I work with the body to soften that and get the body to trust my hands. So I go to an area that's painful. I don't dig into that area. Go over it several times and let it start to relax. And then it invites my fingers to go deeper. So in my version of deep tissue, it's when the body lets me come in deep, so I don't force that depth. So that helped me develop a sense of the body. And also I made mistakes, and notice when that happened, I'm like,
You teach a movement class at Esalen, and you have for many years. I think the whole time that I've been here. Who were some of the teachers that opened up dance for you at Esalen?
Yes, that word dance. If you think about dance is just a movement with judgment.
I know.
When does my movement become dance? Usually when my judging mind comes in, right? All of a sudden I'm doing dance, and that could be wonderful or it can paralyze me, right?
Yeah.
So Juna Van Marty was one of the people that brought this out to me. Because, like he had a t-shirt that people wore, said, dance ugly and drool. Beautiful. Dance is not just for beautiful people looking, sometimes I'm doing dance to impress or to attract. But what if I'm doing authentic movement, like Andrea Juhan, authentic movement? It's just moving in a way that feels good, not because I look good, but do I like to twirl? I started moving and just enjoying the movement. I wasn't much of a dancer before I got to Esalen. Van Marty is one of the people that helped me start seeing music and movement as different. As ways of just expressing, as a way of being authentic. I want to be authentic in my words to you, but I also want to be authentic in my movement. It's kind of hard to lie with your body. My mind can make up stories, but the body is pretty much, this is how I move. Right? And so the body is a more authentic way of communicating. Like somebody's talking to me saying I'm fine, and their arms are crossed and their head's down. I'm like, right now you don't look fine. So that's some of the somatics, right? Reading the body, the better we get at reading the body, the more I can be authentic. And also help me keep from crossing boundaries, watching where your boundaries are and noticing that piece. I'm going to bring in one other thing, Sam. I notice most of the things I do at Esalen, I never asked to do them. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I'm that way. I don't want to effort a lot.
Yeah, I noticed that about you. You're not shy at all, but you have a humble part of you. Maybe that's the Midwestern part.
Yeah, I want attention, but how I get it has to be okay and not threatening to somebody else.
That's interesting.
Right. So that's been a big motivator in my life, and it's still there. It's a good thing that can be abused, right? Or how do I use it when it's helpful, when it's useful, right? It's like using a tool in the toolbox when it's needed, and then putting it back. So one day, Rick Cannon said, "Hey, JJ, can you do a meditation?" I'm like, "Sure." And I was like, "What? I haven't been trained in meditation, but I notice I'm very meditative when I play my guitar. So I thought, I will do a sensory awareness meditation, using the guitar and voice as a way of getting the mind out of the way and letting meditation be a little bit easier by being guided. So I did a sensory awareness chakra meditation. I use the chakras as a framework that the mind can focus on. And that helps me get my mind out of the way and get about a business of just looking inside and see what's happening sensationally in my body. Because that's what meditation is for me. As we did in the beginning, we checked into how we were feeling and what's contributed to that. And if you think about it, if I were going to be very broad strokes as a human being, what I'm doing almost all the time is trying to feel a certain way. I want to feel happy. I want to feel joy. I want to love my family. I do want to avoid some feelings because they scare me, but still it's about, I'm kind of motivating myself around feeling states. Now we're talking about emotions and sensations. I said earlier, how do I know I'm feeling a certain emotion? Because it's not a thought. There's something happening in the body that tells me I'm feeling happy or sad or grief. Our feeling states are changed mostly, I believe, by experiences, not by thought. Like try to tell yourself to stop feeling sad if you're feeling sad. It doesn't work so much. I think that's why Esalen is such an experiential place, because that brings about change much more efficiently and much more authentically. I felt deep joy, but then when I started taking these classes, like, well, how do I get more of that? Where's it come from? How can I? And Esalen was helping me deeply with that, and all the other workshops I was taking. I was getting an idea, what's going on here? What is the Esalen sauce? Kind of like when you go to a restaurant and you have a wonderful meal, you ask the chef, what's the recipe? I want to taste it again.
Yeah.
And so what's the recipe of Esalen? There is a recipe here. I think Esalen invites us to come in, and it takes away all the worries and things that make us feel unsafe. You know, I don't have to work. I don't have to cook. I don't have to clean. I just have to come here and exist. And now I can do a reset and, like, first of all, look at, here I am. Am I feeling the way I want to feel? And if so, why not? And then Esalen gives us all these practices. We have yoga, we have meditation, we have dance, we have movement. Because I think the secret of feeling the way we want to feel is a practice. I think Michael Murphy and George Leonard, in their exploration, saw that workshops were powerful at Esalen, but once people got home, they kind of dwindled away a little bit.
Yeah.
So a practice is needed to keep that feeling. That's why I think yoga and meditation developed to help us feel a certain way. I want to get rid of the racing mind, I want the body to feel good. And Esalen has thousands of practices. Walking in the woods is a practice. Having a deep conversation is a practice. Interviewing, wow, that's a huge practice. How do I delve deep into, right? Instead of just asking questions, ask questions that evoke, right? That's what I learned that Esalen was about. So how can I take those somatic practices and workshops and Gestalt and bring them into a format where I'm experiencing it, not just talking about it?
Yeah.
The body's language is through sensation. So my job when I'm having my conversation with my body is not to judge it, not to get rid of it, not to say what it is or what it should do. I'm just there to be a witness. You hear so many times how it's good to be witness to another person and let them speak. I don't have to fix them. I think it's the same way with the body. If I judge the body or say it's a certain way, it freezes that in the body. If I say the body's bad or this emotion's bad, I believe it gets stuck in the body. So just by being with those sensations and watching them gives them a chance to have their own expression and their own language, and they can sequence and go where they need to go instead of me telling them what it should be. And that's pretty far out there, but that's what I do with my sessions and things here at Esalen. So that second part, the dance, as some people call it, I call it a dance awake. But if I say dance, then a lot of people don't come. So now I call it pathways to joy. Matter of fact, I call everything I do here pathways to joy.
Okay.
Like this is a joyful moment. You know, doing dance is joyful. Doing personal sessions is joyful. Everything I do is a pathway to joy. And what are math pathways?
Were you always forward facing? I mean, a lot of people know you at Esalen. They know JJ. We see a lot of the comments that come through. And JJ was great, and this, that. Were you from the beginning kind of a person who interacted a lot with the guests?
Yeah, that's the bartender part. You know, that's a great place of practice. I went into the office first.
Yeah.
And that was just me being a bartender again. And I loved it because, first of all, the people come into Esalen, they're ready to pop. It's like they're ready. It's a big deal to get here.
Yep.
And it doesn't take much to move them because we're ready. We're looking for it. You know, I can take almost any workshop and have a great time here.
Right.
And it's really about Esalen, I think.
Right.
You can take that workshop out there somewhere closer and cheaper to you. But people choose to come to Esalen to do it. So there's, again, the Esalen thing. So I was always like that. And I like facing with people. And a lot of people are like afraid to because sometimes people will come in with complaints. And I got to practice Gestalt that way. So that was a perfect place to practice because not everybody was happy. If they were upset, we are the people, we are the face. And then I got to a place where I started interacting with the leaders and shepherding them in. And I just really love that practice.
Yeah. Kind of like you're a diplomat for Esalen.
The hoster child, forward facing.
Yeah. But they asked you to do it. You didn't ask to do it. People have come to you.
You make a great point, Sam. You put me in a room full of people I don't know without a role, and I'm very quiet. But when I'm giving a role to be forward facing, then I can pick that up. But I need that role to have permission. I'm supposed to do this. So it helped me do that here at Esalen.
Now you teach a class on the experiential schedule, which is very well attended. It's called How to Drop Into Esalen. So what do you do in that class? And people come to that when they first come to Esalen, yeah?
Exactly. That's a replacement to orientation. Like a lot of orientation, which I did for years at Esalen, is how do you find your room? What do you do at the baths? And which is important. But the most important thing I think about Esalen is arriving. About getting into that feeling state. How do I do that? So what I'm doing in that drop into Esalen, which is a visceral thing, dropping in is not a thought. The dropping in is like I come to a new place and at first I'm reticent because it's not safe. It's new. Right. And so I'm showing them how through connection, actually I say there's 3 things to dropping in. We're all seekers among other seekers, which helps. We're all doing the same thing.
Yeah.
So now we have a common purpose and values. Connection, which is, I keep going over, connection is the biggest thing at Esalen. Connection is the thing that greases the wheels here. Connection with each other, to myself, to this amazing land.
Yes.
And to whatever you call that ethereal out there, the woo-woo, spiritual, or whatever it is, there's that connection too, right?
Yeah.
And then I need lots of energy because what I'm doing, I'm coming to Esalen, which is a risky place. I mostly get the things I value in life by taking risk, being vulnerable and courageous. You know, love is the biggest example. Super risky, super vulnerable. If it doesn't turn out right, it's really painful. Yet, as the bard said, better to have loved and lost than not to have loved at all. So we're taking risk here at Esalen. It's a risk-taking place. Or another word for risk, I use longing. I'm exploring my longing here. Steve Harper has his class, belonging, longing and longing. A lot of my life is built in safety, the house, the home, children, taking care of, the roof over the head. But if we don't have risk or longing in our life, we kind of rig out as human beings. We need that. Mm-hmm. We need that to grow. That's what the human potential is about, that Esalen talks about. So when I talk about risk and vulnerability is how big of a risk. So I start very small. One way we take risk and we make them simpler in connecting is shaking hands. We have rituals for that. But we think me shaking hands and talking and saying where I come from and what I do for a living is connecting, which it is. But if I don't go beyond that, our connection doesn't deepen.
Yeah.
So now I take a bigger risk. Now I say, let's get together in a group and say who you are, where you want to be, what brought you here. Now we're raising the temperature a little bit. I don't go talk about your earliest childhood trauma.
You don't jump straight
fast,
there. Okay.
Too fast.
I
Right?
got you.
So it's learning how to use this body to say it's too risky.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the mind says, just get in there and do it, which can have disastrous results for a lot of people.
Do you find that people are also interested in sort of the history of Esalen when they come here in 2024? They want to hear about the 1960s at all?
Yeah. But that's the other part of it. Hearing about the history is one way of what made Esalen. What is it about? What is its values? History is one way of seeing how Esalen grew and progressed from the 60s and what happened there and what was making it work, So Dick and Michael, I think, came to the conclusion that it needs to be an experiential place. They started getting all these teachers that were more body-based, not so much lecturing. I think that they learned that just academic education wasn't enough. They both dropped out of grad school, both really smart guys, and came here and started doing this edgy stuff. And all the teachers they brought were edgy too. Alan Watts, was an Episcopalian priest, dropped out. And he discovered Zen Buddhism and alcohol. He was really good at both of them. Richard Feynman came and he loved to do particle physics, but he was in the nude playing bongo drums. Joseph Campbell came here, hearing about all these luminaries. First, it also helps my brain to authenticate.
When you came here initially, the first couple of years, first decade, how did the community feel to you? Was that a great attraction for you to be within a community?
I have to admit that because of my background, groups of people are dangerous.
Okay.
And they're also wonderful. But when I had to choose, I would choose dangerous over wonderful in case, right? Groups of people sometimes could be surly. And I'm like, wow, when are they going to turn that towards me? Right? So I've always kind of flitted on the edges of communities. And energy-wise, I cannot connect to everyone. And I notice that my energy, if I keep people at a certain distance, I can keep that energy going. If they get closer, then it becomes more vulnerable. And I want to be very careful about who I let in close. I want to take some really good time to do that, like a year or so, with you, we've done, and I want to have a lot of experiences with you. Like we've done a lot together. We've done this, we've done the work scholar, we played basketball together.
That's right. I was just thinking about that.
Yeah, it just came up in my mind. I got to know all aspects of you, and I need to see your shadow side, and you need to see mine, because then I don't really know you till I see that. So how much do I trust you with? Not that I don't trust you, but how much trust do you earn? We really need to earn each other's trust, I believe. And I can't do that through words. So I'm very careful about, how many people I let close, because it's just wisdom for me to do that.
Yeah, it's interesting because you've been one of the folks at Esalen who stayed here maybe the longest. If you've been here since '02, it's 2 decades plus. A big part of it is community, but so it's just interesting to hear about like wanting to be in community, but wanting to be on the outskirts. And that resonates with me as well.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's good to find that stuff out. That's why I believe relationships should take a while. Like my wife, Camille, I met here. I didn't think I was going to get married.
No.
I was turned 60 years old. I'm like, good, I'm going to be a curmudgeonous bachelor. And then Camille came through the door one day. I went, well, that goes out the door. But we kind of circled around each other for a while, for about a year before. And then, and that is, coming to that change part again, Sam, I've changed more than anything else in being in a relationship.
That's amazing.
That, I will say, is the most powerful thing. Being with Camille, it's really helped me because what I notice, if I'm on my own, if things start to get a little hard, I just kind of stop doing them. But in relationship, the wonderful thing about relationship, I will do the hard thing because I love this person.
Yeah.
I will stay in it.
Yeah.
And she's been the person who's ushered me into more growth that I didn't think I had room for. She loves to laugh. I thought I laughed a lot. That woman laughs more than anyone I know. She is willing to reach out and touch me, even when we're in conflict. And there's nothing that calms my nervous system more than touch. Mm-hmm. I can't believe somebody could touch me inauthentically and I wouldn't notice. And that touch says, okay, it's okay. Yeah. That is probably the most powerful thing she has, that she has the courage and the confidence to come in and be with me in those times.
Maybe you want to do like a speed round?
Let's do it.
What's your favorite place on Esalen campus?
Ooh. Oh my gosh. Actually, I think it is behind the meditation hut, that shrine they have for Dick Price. It's that you have that hot spring water coming out of a beautiful bowl going into the fresh water, which goes down to the ocean. And not a lot of people know about that.
Oh my goodness, that's great. Most pivotal workshop that we haven't mentioned.
Ooh, I think that would be Ron Kurtz, who does Hakomi, and him saying something and then telling me how I was going to feel before he said it. So I'm going to say this, and then you're going to feel this. And I went, no. And I did.
Yeah, wait, I don't know what Hakomi is. I've heard that phrase uttered quite a bit.
Yeah, he's a mind-body type of therapy that he developed. And Hakomi is one of the first popularized ways of looking at, in therapy, using the body, not just the mind. So it went from talking therapy to using the body. So Ron would look at you, and let's say he's asking me how I'm doing. I say, fine. But I have my hand rubbing up and down my leg. He goes, well, what does your hand and your leg have to say how you're doing? I'm like, what? And then he would do two things. He'd either hold the hand, interrupt that soothing motion, and I'd get a reaction, or he'd take it over. Let me do that for you. And all of a sudden, other things started coming into my mind, so I didn't have to soothe myself. He took that over.
Okay.
So a great example of mind and body therapy.
What's a mistake you used to make as a teacher that you no longer make?
I tried to fix people, not intentionally, but the motivation was, I want this person to feel happy and better. That way I don't have to feel the reaction of that emotion, right? I would try to make them feel better so I would feel better.
Yeah.
And that was like, no, that's not how it works. That's not how it works. Yeah.
What's the number one question that you get asked when you're teaching how to drop into Esalen? What do people want to know?
How long have you lived here?
That's it, huh?
Yeah, it's very interesting. Well, you have to remember they've just been driving and flying for, 10, 18 hours.
Yeah.
And they're just exhausted. Yeah. And so when I say, you have any questions, it's like silence. Yeah. So they're probably thinking it, but it's too unsafe to raise a hand, right? We haven't dropped in yet. So asking a question is risky.
Yeah.
So not many people will do that at the first pass. Yeah.
Here's a question about presenting. Well, what if you're up there and you're telling your jokes and you're doing your stuff that usually gets a laugh, but it's not happening this time. What do you do to turn it around? Then
I will ask questions, because people I'll say myself, but I think all people love to be asked questions. Who are you?
Yeah.
All who are you questions. Wake them up. One of the practices, I don't just talk to them, I do practices with them too.
Okay.
So I will get them together and talk about, why are you here?
You'll have guests talk to other guests.
So they'll get in groups of 3 or 4, and I give them a question, and it has to be a little risky. Not like, oh, I just came here to do a hot tub. What experience do you want to have at Esalen? If it could be anything, what would it be? Mm-hmm. And the idea is to make that question, the answer, risky. That when I say it, something motivates inside here, something shaking, saying, I don't know if it's safe enough, but I want to try a small risk. So I get them started right away. So that way I'm not the only agent. They need to be their own change agent as well. And they do it together in a smaller group, so now it's safer. And they're just kind of really just talking and riffing. So it takes that structure away and makes it safer.
I like that. That's smart. Okay. Taking notes. You're known for being funny. What is your secret? What would you say is the JJ? How do you achieve being funny?
Thank you. First of all, I'm irreverent.
Irreverence. Okay.
Some things that are serious can be scary. Mm-hmm. So just throwing in especially a self-deprecation is always a good one.
That is a good one.
Take the sage off the stage. I'm just some guy making up shit. Like I tell people, if you don't like what I'm doing, pretend you're going to the bathroom and don't come back, And
they like that. Okay.
Yeah. So that type of funny, we're making light of things. As I said, Dick Price had that great saying, that situation is hopeless, but not serious.
Yeah.
Kind of turn that phrase around on its head.
Yeah. Does that self-deprecation feel sincere, or is it a performed self-deprecation?
That's a really good question, Sam. I think it's a little bit of both, because it is true. It keeps me, because I learn from it as well as they do. And so as soon as I do that, it keeps me from getting a little bit too high and mighty.
It does, doesn't it?
So there's a little bit of intentionality around it, but it doesn't feel incongruent or feels transparent.
Yeah.
Not too much structured, but it is a little,
What's your most dependable pathway to joy these days?
Yeah. What I do is I walk my dog, my 17-year-old Shih Tzu Daisy, where we live next door at Cormorant Cove, and there's a big driveway up to the top. And the driveway goes up, and it's lined with rock and trees, and goes around to the right and disappears. And I can't go very fast with Daisy. She just kind of shuffles along. So I just go up and I start changing my state. I do these 1-minute meditations to find joy.
Really?
Which is easy because, it's only a minute, right?
Really?
I can do it several times. I teach the 1-minute meditation to people. If you ever want to know, I can tell you.
I am curious about it.
Okay, we'll come back if we have time. And so I just start walking. I'm like, what sensationally is here that could bring me joy? Because anything can. I used to think that joy visited upon me. And I was, how do I get joy? Well, I guess it comes when it wants. But I found I could create situations for it. And that's a sensation. It's like, okay, what am I smelling or seeing or hearing? And I let my eyes get soft. And that looking at the road, it's like this roadway to longing that goes somewhere. I don't know where it goes, but it looks inviting. And so I've just relaxed my body to receive whatever it is. And so I'm not grasping at joy. I'm creating conditions that invite it if it wants to. It may come, it may not. Sometimes I go up the hill and Daisy's still sniffing the bird poop and I'm trying to get her up there and I don't have joy, but I still play with it.
Well, you've piqued my curiosity. Maybe a nice way to end this interview, this experience that we've created for one another would be for you to tell us about 1-minute meditations. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, I'd love to. First of all, I mentioned earlier on that practices are what, keep that feeling we want to feel there. The thing is, practices can put the hard stuff on the front end. And sometimes I'll do a practice because I think it should give me what I want. And that's a dangerous bet. Esalen, we do practices because they feel good. So I'm basically, when I do a practice, I'm asking the body, we're going to do something that's hard, that's going to take energy. And the body will do it for a while. But if I don't start getting some of what I want pretty soon, it will find ways to get rid of it. Boredom, all of a sudden, oh, I have to go to this, and it just falls away. So trying to start a 2-hour practice every day after leaving Esalen, when I think about these practices, and it requires a lot of energy. So it's hard to get the body's buy-in for that. So I need to get the body convinced to do it. And sometimes it's not the quantity of practice, it's the quality and how often. And a practice, and one way of looking at practice like is a habit with awareness, like brushing my teeth. Now I just brush my teeth. I don't give it much awareness, but I just do. Even if I'm hungover, I will still brush my teeth. So practice is a habit with awareness. What I'm trying to do is, when I go into unconsciousness, I fall into the person who I am, which isn't bad, but there's some things in there that don't work very efficiently. Beliefs that don't serve me, and things of that sort, and patterns that don't serve me. So what a practice helps me do is when I go into unawareness, I'm more likely now to go into this new me, this new practice. And so we do it over and over and over again. So it becomes a habit, but we're giving awareness to it. So what I'm wanting is a practice that I can do as many times a day as possible. And so with a 1-minute practice, the body can do anything for a minute. You go for the end of a minute. At the end of it, if nothing's happening, stop. Don't try and make yourself go for 2 minutes. We have a belief in our culture, if we do something harder, faster, we'll get more of it. And I don't believe the body likes that very much. Let the body stop. Because if I don't, then what I've done is I've betrayed the body. We made an agreement, and now I'm welching on it. So I'm trying to get the trust of the body. So I'm setting this up, the 1-minute meditation. So thank you for bearing with me. So there's about 5 things to a practice. There's more, but if you get too many, then you lose track. First one is it has to give you what you want. Don't do a practice because somebody says, oh, you should do this and you'll be better. And there's thousands of practices out there. So you need to find something that is pretty well what you love. And anything can be a practice, as I said. Walking through the woods, having this conversation, looking at the ocean, sitting in the baths. It doesn't have to be meditation or yoga. Anything that you love can be turned into a practice. And I should have lots of practices, not just one. So finding that practice that says yes in my body, when I'm doing it and feeling it, yes. Will it get difficult sometimes? Yes, but holding that off for a while. And this way my practice will get longer organically if I do them for just a minute. And that's the second one. How often do I do it? And the third, how long? So those are the second, third ones. How long and how often? And how long is, I came up with a minute. For you, it might be 30 seconds, but something short enough that the body doesn't I got to get up and do this again. So many times I've got up to do a meditation. I have to put the incense in and put the candle in, and, you have to take care of things. And just setting up the meditation keeps me from doing it. But at 1 minute, I can just do it right then and there, right? And at the end of the minute, if you feel inspired, keep going on until you stop. And here's something not many people do. At the end, when you're ready to stop, without answering the question, say, why am I stopping now? There's something in the body that says it's time to stop. And by not answering the question or bringing meaning to it or saying what it is, I'm telling the body like, okay, I know there's something in there that's not ready yet. I will respect that. And I will stop each time. And then the bodies will be more willing to do something more difficult because it has some control, some agency. That's my belief. I can't prove that, but I think it makes a lot of sense to me. And for how often? As many times as possible. Every time I have a spare minute, I'm standing in the food line, walking to work, being in the bathroom, anytime at the office, anywhere we're at, we can take a minute to just go and reset. Come into whatever practice it is. Could be a memory, it could be something you see. And of course, bringing that practice of the focusing, what you focus on, you get more of. I'm training my body to always look for what I'm wanting. Whereas biologically, I'm trained to look for what's dangerous. Yeah, right. And pain signals are about 5 times stronger than pleasure. So I need to find a lot of pleasure, which also gives me energy to be with the difficult things. So that's doing it all the time. And I let people know, because the fourth thing is support. Esalen is one of the greatest support places in the world. Everybody's doing it. That's why practices are so easy here. I'm meditating with a bunch of people or doing yoga with people. I'm inspired. But then I get home and there's my family and there's 2 hours I don't have and nobody knows what I'm doing and I don't have the support and it starts to drain away. So when I get out there, I need support. I need to tell other people I'm doing it and do it with people. Come to Esalen, find things that support that practice. Really important. Yeah. Now, the fifth one becomes tricky. This is where earlier I talked about friction. As human beings, we need friction, But people, we've labeled it as a challenge, or there will be conflict. There will be hard, right? Like Esalen calls everything workshops. I don't know about you, Sam, but I don't really want to work anymore. I think we should change the names to fun shops, or play shops. How we name things really affect us. So instead of saying we're doing something difficult, we will find some friction to help us grow. But if I have too much friction on the front end, I will stop doing it. Yeah. So finding that right amount of friction, and that could be anything. Kind of like when I see a mountain, somebody says, climb it, 10,000 feet. I don't think so. But there's a week free of Esalen if you get to the other side. I know. Kind of like runners are a great example. They run and they're tired, they're exhausted, their muscles are aching, yet they get this high. Yeah. That's a good example of the good struggle. The good struggle. Yeah. So I want to save that one till later. I call it the Buddha has come to sit on my feet. I can't go around him, can't go through him. I have to be with that. I have to change my relationship to struggle and call it, this is friction. So I've learned to judge things that aren't happy as bad, but I know I'm happy because I've struggled and come through the things I call bad. So I need to start valuing that thing I call bad, and that is part of happiness. And my joy is directly relational to my vulnerability. If I'm not willing to be vulnerable, then my joy is going to decrease. Yeah. Right? And then my joy becomes going out to the movies and having dates and stuff instead of this great joy. Right. So that fifth one is a tough one, but very necessary. So again, has to give you what you want. Keep it short to a minute or so and do it as often as possible. Get support for it. And there will be some friction that will help you grow that you need to embrace, to not think of it as a necessary evil.
The good struggle.
Yeah, the good struggle. Or the good fight, they say.
Thank you, JJ. Thank you so much for this conversation.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you for listening to Voices of Esalen. Today's show is produced in conjunction with Shira Levine. Our theme music is by Nico Holloman. All other music was created by JJ Jeffries. If you're feeling inspired, please remember to rate us and review. That's how we grow our show. Until next time, be well.